Old woman with scarred dog enters stage. Audience reacts. No one knew. They were about to witness one of the most unforgettable veteran stories ever told. The host spoke softly into the mic. Next contestant, Eleanor Hayes, 72. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A veteran? In a dog talent show? Must be a mistake. But she didn't respond. She simply raised her hand, and in that moment, the dog stood tall. A series of precise actions followed. No hesitation, no show training, just the survival instincts of a four-legged warrior who had once stood beside soldiers in combat. And then, the entire hall fell silent, because what they were witnessing wasn't about a contest. It was a message from justice for veterans, that you should never underestimate a veteran, whether human or dog. Her name was Eleanor Hayes, but the only one who still called her Ellie was a dog. Each morning she walked through the park, old army coat frayed at the shoulders, combat boots, now the color of dust. People glanced at her, some with polite smiles. Most turned away. They didn't know. She had once saved over 60 soldiers on the front lines. Now, she lived alone. No husband, no children, just one companion by her side. A large German shepherd, half his face scarred, named Sergeant. People would ask, "Why don't you pick a cuter one?" She'd simply reply, "I didn't choose him because he needed me. I chose him because I saw myself in his eyes." But they still didn't understand, until the day she walked on stage. They say abandoned dogs always have a reason. Sergeant was one of them. Found near the border, emaciated, torn ear, limping on his hind leg. A shard of metal remained in one eye, impossible to remove, but not life-threatening. At the rescue shelter, people skipped his cage without a second glance. This one looks scary. Can't walk him around kids. Each time someone came near, he just sat quietly. No barking, but his eyes never left them. When Ellie appeared, he didn't run to her, but for the first time, he bowed his head, slightly. She looked at him for a long moment, then said quietly, "Hello, comrade." And from that moment on, two forgotten souls began walking together. Ellie stood at the registration table, leash in hand. The attendant glanced at her, then down at Sergeant. "Name? And dog's name?" she asked without looking up. "Eleanor Hayes. Sergeant, we're entering the freestyle category." A pause, then chuckles from behind. Two young girls in sparkling dresses with fluffy white dogs whispered to each other, "Oh God, what do they think they'll do on stage?" Ellie just smiled, but Sergeant didn't. He turned to the girls, quietly. No growl, no snarl, just a look, deeply human. And in that look there was something that silenced laughter. But then the loudspeaker called, "First contestant, please proceed to the prelim stage." Ellie tightened her grip on the leash. The competition had begun, and all eyes were still on them. The waiting room was like a carnival. Dogs with silky fur, colorful ribbons, perfume spritzed on their paws. Ellie sat in a corner. No tent, no accessories, just a folding chair and a worn towel for Sergeant to lie on. A middle-aged contestant walked over, eyeing Ellie head to toe. "Oh, did you enter the wrong division? This is Tier A." Ellie nodded calmly. "I know. We're in the right place." No one invited them into conversations. No one checked on them. Only glances skeptical, judging, dismissive. Later, the host walked by and whispered to his assistant, "Let that pair go early. Don't let them ruin the vibe." Ellie heard it, but she said nothing. She just gently stroked Sergeant's back and whispered, "We've stepped into worse enemy territory than this." And the dog kept his eyes closed, but his ears twitched. Music blared, lights flashed. A tiny dog in a pink silk dress ran through confetti. The crowd clapped. Next up, two collies leaping through hoops and smoke. Each act got cheers. Laughter echoed. Phones were raised to record. Backstage, Ellie and Sergeant sat still. No rehearsals, no fluffing. Only Ellie, smoothing the towel under his paws. Sergeant breathed steadily. His eyes weren't on the stage. They were on her. Ellie looked up. The spotlight hit her face not with hope of glory, but with the quiet stillness of someone who once waited for a flare signal in the dead of night. And then, their names were called. Ellie rose, and the laughter was about to die. No intro music, no MC banter, just the steady footsteps of an old woman and her scarred dog across a bare stage. The crowd murmured. Some laughed. Others scrolled their phones. Ellie stood still, raised her left hand slightly. No one understood, but Sargent immediately lay flat. She stepped back, tilted her right hand. The dog sprang into a perfect arc landing by a casualty model, with precision. No commands, no shouts, just gestures and instinct. Sargent performed mock field triage, secured the danger zone, stood guard. Every move wasn't performance. It was battlefield training. Under the lights, the room was frozen. Some held their breath. Some cried, without knowing why. And for the next full minute, no one could look away. As Sargent completed his final move, body roll shielding the wounded, the crowd awoke, like from a trance. Then, applause. Slow, but strong. A man stood up. Gray suit. Event sponsor badge. Charles Whitman, CEO of the country's top canine training firm and major event funder. He walked up to the stage, smiled, and offered his hand. A performance. Truly unexpected. Ellie shook his hand, holding eye contact for one exact second. But Charles's eyes never left Sargent. Not with admiration, but with calculation. As if he had just discovered something rare before others noticed. Ellie tightened her grip on the leash, and in that fleeting moment, her chest sank slightly. A feeling, a shadow small, but undeniable. The night after the contest, Ellie's small suburban home stayed lit later than usual. She made a simple dinner, placing the bigger portion in Sargent's bowl as always. But he didn't come. She called his name. Once, then twice. No footsteps, no bark. Ellie rose and walked the house. Front door locked, windows latched. But the back door ajar, just slightly. No wind could have done that. On the floor, Sargent's backup collar. No blood, no signs of struggle, only an eerie emptiness. Ellie stepped outside. Streetlights barely lit the lawn. She called again. This time, her voice trembled. The whole neighborhood sat in unnatural silence. She went back in, sat down, hands shaking. Something inside her had just dropped. This wasn't an accident. It was an intentional disappearance. The house was so silent, you could hear the ticking wall clock. Ellie sat motionless. In her hands, Sargent's old collar from the war, now lying beside the new one, found on the floor last night. 2 collars. One past, one present. Both lost. Lily stepped in, holding a cup of tea. But when she saw Ellie's thin shoulders trembling, she stopped. Ellie whispered, as if to herself, maybe I shouldn't have taken in another one. Maybe there's nothing left worth fighting for. Lily sat beside her, said nothing. She simply reached for Ellie's hand and felt it colder than usual. A moment passed. Then Lily's voice is soft, but steady. I'm scared of losing him, but I'm more afraid of losing you too. Ellie turned. In Lily's eyes, no anger, no tears, only a look Ellie had seen years ago on the faces of young wounded soldiers, the will that never learned how to surrender. The next day, Lily brought home footage from a neighbor's security camera. 3:40, 2 a.m. A black SUV pulled up to the back fence. No horn, no lights, no barking. A tall figure in dark clothes walked straight toward the rear gate. 2 minutes later, returned, leading a 4-legged shadow. No struggle, no noise. Sargent hadn't resisted. Ellie furrowed her brow, her eyes no longer wet, but cold. Lily kept digging. Online, they found the name, Charles Whitman Head, of an international canine training and export firm. Beneath each article were hidden comments, stories of military dogs that vanished. An old report, Veterans file complaints after dogs were acquired and never returned. Ellie quietly repeated, not admiration, but possession. Charles had seen what he wanted right there on stage, and now he had it. That night, Ellie didn't wear her usual coat. She wore her old military shirt, the field nurse badge pinned back on. Lily brought a flashlight, map, and a pocket camera. They stopped at the gates of a private training facility owned by Charles. A clear sign hung above, professional animal training, no trespassing. But behind those gates were unnatural barks. Urgent, hoarse, cut short. The two slipped through the fence, past a warehouse, dodging cameras. Inside a back storage shed, they found rows of steel cages. And at the far end, a large dog with a scarred back lifted his head at the sound of Ellie's footsteps. No barking, no whimpering, just standing. Ellie approached. Sergeant, the dog flinched, moved forward, pressed his head against the bars. Footsteps echoed behind them. Charles Whitman. He stood beneath the yellow light, speaking slowly. I saw its potential from the start. It doesn't belong to ordinary lives. Ellie turned, voice low but firm. You don't own loyalty. You only buy silence. Charles stepped forward. Ellie didn't back down. She'd walked through real fire before. And this time, she wasn't alone. Lily swiftly popped the lock. The soft click sounded small, but to Ellie, it was like a shot of life fired into darkness. The metal door swung open. Sergeant didn't rush out. He walked slowly, stopped in front of Ellie. Then sat just, like he had on the battlefield. His eyes looked at her with blame, not with fear. Only one thing remained, readiness. Charles shouted, you two have no right here. I'll sue you for trespassing. Ellie didn't look back. She placed her hand gently on Sergeant's head, then turned to Lily. Take the picture. Click. The photo captured an old veteran, a young woman, a loyal dog inside a cage of steel, but none of them broken. Days later, that image went viral. Investigative reports reopened. Charles's license was suspended, and El the Forgotten Veteran became a symbol of loyalty, of justice, and of a friendship that didn't need to be of the same species. Ellie didn't enter that contest to win. She only wanted to remind the world that those who once sacrificed must never be forgotten. And Sergianthi didn't need a spotlight. He had stood in the line between life and death, not for fame, but for duty. And when they walked out of that warehouse, they proved one truth. Real warriors don't need an audience to be great. We may not see them, we may not hear about them, but they're still out there, living in silence, carrying battles that never ended. If you believe that courage has no age, that loyalty cannot be bought. Share this story, so every veteran, every soul once dismissed, knows they're not alone. This is justice for veterans. And we are here to tell the stories the world forgot.